When it comes to EVE Online, every player wants to know the most effective tactic available. You want to know the meta. The meta controls everything. It determines what will and will not happen. Knowing the meta will alter your views, make you question your reality. It might even make you laugh. And now, you're part of it. You're watching The Meta Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Meta Show. Today is December the 10th, 2022. I'm Brisc Rubal, alongside Kazanier and Angry Mustache, our boys from Goons, are my fellow CSM members.
Hello.
Thank you guys for showing up. You could be watching the England-France match like everybody else is, and bitching about the referees.
Is that what's going down there? Right. I have friends in both of those countries, so I have to stay, politically neutral as always. I'll have to beg off having an opinion on that. But
I'll say France are the defending champions, but the English feel like they've got their chance to bring it home finally since the first time since
I've heard 60s. I've heard that a number of times in my life. I want to observe manfully without further comment. Right.
Bring it home.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Coming home. Is that what I've been told? I've heard that.
Is it? I mean, the last time I checked, it was 1-0 France, but I have not seen it in the last 20 minutes because I've been working on the show for you people.
I mean, I think it makes sense, right? If it actually comes, if it's still coming home, that means it hasn't come home successfully yet. Right. Oh. And that turns out, in fact, to be the case, I believe.
Omni says it's over. It's over. And that
maybe
means
we'll get some viewership now.
There you go. Maybe the numbers will start to tick up a little bit. I know it is. There's the chat. I know it is a little early for you East Coasters. It's 4 o'clock Eastern Freedom Time, the time we always do the show. But after last week's show, I mean, last week you got to watch live and in color the first really massive EVE Online fight in pretty much this year. So that was kind of exciting. Angry and I got to do it live. Kaz came in a little bit late, but he was here.
I was on the fight the whole time, right?
Well, so I mean, that was the thing. That was the hard part for me was I had like Darkshines in one ear and you guys in the other, and I'm trying to make sure I don't screw everything up and broadcast comms and do all kinds of crap. So not only did we won the IS4, we won the objective, we won the meme, we won everything. It was great.
Just gotta fly logistics. Just forget about your kill board and be at.
Is that how you do it?
Yes, absolutely. I absolutely brought a Guardian to that fight.
I flew 3 boosters and Horde shot them all within like the same minute, so it was really convenient.
There you go.
I mean, maybe that's leaking too much. That's not the entire story of my lack of a kill board, but it's a useful part, right? So,
Robbie, as far as I'm aware, that fort is still there. I mean, the real issue, and we talked about it last week ad nauseum, but I'll go over it again for those who weren't paying attention. This was the prototypical Asakai style fight. What do I mean by that? I mean, there is absolutely no reason for this to have ever happened. It did not matter. It was no objective. It was just everybody happened to show up. And so the fight kicked off and then it became a thing. And Fraternity started losing caps out the wazoo. So a lot of the most fun fights in EVE, it's very difficult being an EVE commentator because we don't know when or where these fights are going to happen. There are times when we're lucky, like M2. When M2 kicked off, we had been waiting for a fight like that for a while. Right. And then when second M2 came off, we had a chance to hype it and be ready for it for weeks. And we were very practiced with M2 because we had been sitting and waiting for a month before the M2 fight, or actually I guess we'll say 2 months before the M2 fight, for the bad guys in Pappy to drop Keep Stars and NPC Delve. So we were ready to go. We had our breaking news stuff set up. We could get on the stream. We could get cameras and eyes and everything pretty close. And it was very quick. This fight, we're all scrambling, trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And I'll tell you this right now, the most dangerous and scary thing for any Imperium News Network streamer is when they get a ping from Mifune in the streamer channel saying, hey, something's about to kick off. Because that means everybody else fucked up if Mifune is the only one that caught it. Just saying.
Is that what happened?
That's what happened.
That is, yeah, we all pay for our sins occasionally. Brisc, and maybe last week was yours. That's very.
That is it.
I was sort of surprised that it turned into that strength of like a giant marquee set piece fight. Even when I saw the broadcast there was like galaxy wide fight, right? Well, prophetic as a matter of fact. So it was fun.
It was weird. Angry, you were on the fight, right? Or no?
I got there late, and yeah, so I was stuck in the move up there for most of the stream, and I got there and immediately died.
Right. No, I came up with one of the first. I think I was in Azur's fleet directly. That sounds right. I might have been in a different one for a brief time, but came up with the Logi wing, which there were a ton of. They added to the broadcast. So we need more logistics, and then we ended up overloaded, and our fleet barely got shot, right? Because we were flying sacks, right? And they did so much better against the various Pappy forces than the Eagles did, that we felt like we did not have enough to do a substantial amount of the time. Now we lost Kunmi's Barghest, which was sad, and we got a fair number of sacrileges were lost, right? But in comparison to the Eagles, it was just no contest. So,
yeah, of course, there was a storm on. Why would you shoot a armor?
We want to find that storm again and just follow it around and fight within it for the rest of EVE Online, right? Plasma fleet. So
yeah,
I stole that joke from
those Horde Paladins in the same storm were extremely tough.
Yeah, it's a good thing they didn't engage us for the first 50% of the fight.
I have to say the post-fight spin, and we'll go into this because it was interesting. It was interesting. Big fight. We hadn't a chance. We were talking about it live as it happened. We didn't get a chance to look at the post-spin. I'm trying to find some of the Reddit threads, but it was a week ago, so forgive me. All right, I got it. Here's the one I wanted to show you guys. This is pretty classic. This was all of the spin from our dear friends in Horde. And it was just like the most spin I've ever seen in my life. And essentially what they kept trying to say was, well, we didn't really lose because we were third partying. Going to help your friends who are blue is not third partying in any sense of the word. Just be aware. And then, of course, there's if you only count goons and PanFam, it was 33 billion versus 27 billion PanFam. But they're counting all of the Brave and Greater Trash Coalition guys on the Imperium side.
Oh, okay.
They're not part of Imperium.
Is this a hypocrisy double dip, is what you're telling me? This
right. I mean, that's the thing. So they're like, enemy lost 130. We lost 260, but 150 of that was Fret. I mean, they did everything they could to try to act like Fraternity was not a friend of theirs, that they weren't going to help them.
Here, I have a comment. Now, I can't talk about
Feel free.
where I learned this, right? It's one of those type of comments, but I read things. And what I have gathered is that Horde is well known among other people that they work with and know for precisely this type of behavior, right? About how they're so much better than the other group, right? And so it's not something that we have invented, right? And so I look at these results and I'm trying to, this is of a piece with their general behavior, is to make out how if it was only about them and make themselves look good. And I hear them say that and was like, well, what about your valued allies that you were supposedly there to help? What happened to them? Was it of any meaning that they lost those capitals? Were you going to do anything about that? First, it's just, so the existence of this as propaganda that they supposedly find convincing is second order telling, in a sense, right? And confirms for me these things that I have heard in places that I can't say, right? So exactly. Very, very interesting stuff. That's my
so all right. So the other thing with this, I think, is just funny, is Noisy's comment. Noisy says, if you're third partying but you're blue to them, does that mean Horde was AWOXing? Well, we know Horde doesn't like AWOXing because of what happened this week. This was another thing we wanted to talk about. Look at this. Everyone, the Corp Tropa D Elite. For those of you who are not aware, Tropa, long-time test corporation, left test to go and hang with their buddies in Horde.
I know that reference. Steve Rogers' voice. Okay.
I know that reference.
Even I've heard of these guys. Yeah, okay.
They get kicked out. They have 2 weeks to move out. And then Gabbas goes into great detail. I'll read this because I think it's amusing to me. This is a good opportunity to remind everyone that AWOXing other alliance members is not tolerated, and that disputes over crabbing are resolved through a sheriff or director. Should one member AWOX another over crab drama, the Corp is expected to take action against the member. As a Corp CEO, you can also try a power play and threaten to quit the alliance instead of punishing the AWOXer, but your bluff might be called. And then, of course, the standard, we'll find places for both. Say that again, Cass. Go ahead.
He laid it all right out there for us, at least.
Right. So if you go in here, so we get in the chat a little bit more detail as to what happened.
I feel like compelled to ask, as a neutral journalist, is there another side to this story? Right.
This is the side of the story. So Bearhawk here writes what exactly happened. He was passing through QTAC-T and Lee Chanka. If you guys out in the audience have not met Lee Chanka, well, first of all, it tells me you never go to Pure Blind. Because if you go to Pure Blind and you've ever been through the Ewok system, you have seen Lee Chanka. And yes, his nickname is Flea Chanka. Toxically, I was privileged enough to have killed him about 3 weeks ago on Saturday Night Swarm. We caught him. One of our random thrashers caught him in a nightmare crabbing in the system next to where we were gate camping, and we were able to get all the guys over onto him before he could kill the thrasher, and we killed him. And let me just tell you, if you have not been in local when Lee gets pissed, you're missing out on one of the most sublime instances of Eve salt mining you will ever find. Let me just tell you. Okay? So it looks like Lee threatened another guy about taking all of the rock havens and not defending the ESS, and then he AWOXed him. And apparently they didn't want to do anything to Lee Chanka. This is pure Eve at its finest.
You know, there are so many crab problems in Eve that can be solved by saying, just take the Forsaken hub. Right. And so to see that it escalates all the way to this level of like a Corp getting kicked from Horde is just, it warms my heart. Thank you, Brisc.
I mean, it just makes me laugh. And I have to say, like, you think about it, the reality is you can tell when the big groups in Eve really need another war. Like they're tired of being at peace. And when that happens, you start seeing an increase in the level of crab drama. And I'll tell you this, I have never been an alliance leader in EVE Online, but I have been very alliance leader adjacent to a large number of them. And I will tell you, I have never in my entire life met a single alliance leader in this game who wanted to deal with crab drama ever. It is the worst shit on the planet. Guys arguing over PvE and money making is the absolute last thing anybody, especially a nullsec alliance leader, wants to deal with. It's awful. Kaz, I don't know how you guys deal with it.
Kick them both.
I mean,
well, that works too, right? I mean, that's typically the way.
For many years, we sort of contracted this diplomatically to an autocrat in the Imperium who was fond of doomsdaying rule breakers. And for that period, the rules were relatively clear, and it was easy to take a screenshot and see that someone was breaking particular mining rules, and then certain people had their capital mining ships doomsdayed, right? I don't want to name any names, right? But that instilled, I think, a culture of general behavior that helped a little bit. Now, you don't want to go too far with that sort of thing, right? But we try and maintain that sort of general culture of behaving well, because everyone knows that if they're getting noticed because they're a crab, that's not good. The director doesn't want to know your name, right? We don't want to know anything about what's happening in these systems. So when we do, just tell them we don't want this to happen again, right? But sometimes we have, what's the other side to this, right, is that we are a coalition of tens of thousands of people across probably a dozen like primary languages right, in 4 or 5 different time zones. So there are real communications issues that can happen and misunderstandings. So that takes a little bit of work. What's important is to instill in people the idea that we are sharing this space, and it's better for us all being here together, rather than the idea that if they had their own system renting to themselves and they could make their own money and then no one would ever come help them again, that would be worse, right? And we try and educate people, I guess.
Exactly right. Seema, I am not going to acknowledge that pun. It is too good and bad at the same time. And I will say this. Yes, thank you, gentlemen and ladies out there who noticed that my lighting is better. One of my Christmas presents from Mrs. Brisc was new lighting. So thanks, El Gato, for your lighting solutions, for fixing my lighting problems, as you guys have seen. But anyway, we've talked about this. We talked about that. There's a couple of new things that I want to talk about that we didn't get a chance to talk about on last week's show, including one announcement that happened on the fireside after the show, which would have been made on the show had Asher been able to do the show, but he couldn't because he was leading a fleet in the middle of that big fight. But 3 weeks ago, we saw the inclusion of Shadow into the Imperium. And this week, we have a new Imperium member, another one, 2 in as many weeks. We're now joined by Sigma. Let me pull up that Dotland. Sigma Grindset lives in Ketch, 1,503 pilots in the Alliance. They are joining the Imperium. So I'd like to say welcome to our boys from Sigma. They are currently in the process of moving out of Ketch, which is being ceded to the Fire guys because they want to take it for some reason. I don't know why. Ketch is awful. But I'm looking forward to having Reds in Ketch soon, so we can, on Karmaflit, can go back to gate camping Kebbers and HT and Head GP as we normally do, rather than doing on the other side into Imperium Line, because I like Kebbers better. Just saying.
I don't know anything about the political situation with regard to Fire and Wrecking Crew up there in any more detail. I can't really comment. But yeah, well, this is 3 for 3. I need to say the previous week before Shadow Ultimatum, Strybog officially joined the Imperium, right? So we're suddenly a burgeoning empire.
Oh, I forgot Strybog too. That's 3.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I'm sorry, Strybog. Don't AWOX me and Pochman.
I was hoping for some sort of secret 4 for 4, right? And indeed, on the fireside today, Asher started with this and said, no one said that we could go 4 for 4. And I'm sitting here going, wait a second, I should know about this if there is such a thing, right? And then he drops, well, we're not, but we are doing sacrileges. So I got by that, as a matter of fact. That was very good. It was good. So
I'm happy to see.
Excited to have them. They seem very serious about EVE Online in a way that I can sort of fear and respect and feel bad for them, as old and cynical as I am, right? But I also was once part of a group of people who we didn't intend to be serious necessarily. We were all coming off of being serious about World of Warcraft, but we were also the sort of people who couldn't help but be just intense. Right. And they are intense. The guy got up on the fireside, no crap, in front of several hundred people and gave a well-prepared speech. He sounded like something between a military and a religious leader. So maybe
that probably went over very well with goons, not going to lie.
It went terribly. Right. We were all trying to make fun of him. Asher, before introducing him, in the process of introducing him, Asher made fun of the Alliance name, which is in fact terrible. Sigma Grindset, totally at odds with how we are, right? So I hope that a diplomat had the conversation with them and said, listen, the Imperium exists because we need a sort of motif for the largest band of rejects and morons that you've ever seen in your lives. Right now, it just so happens that these guys seem to be well run and well organized because they're all well behaved and well organized, where Imperium is the most well organized EVE organization because its citizenry is the opposite, right? We have to sort of keep control of things. So I'm interested to see how they fit in, right? Like I said, I hope someone had this conversation. They clearly will know already that things are sort of flying chaos monkeys in here a lot of the time by now. But we're, like I said 2 weeks ago, when was that Shadow, or was it when Strybog? Always excited to find new friends. So we'll see how it goes. This will be very exciting.
Excellent.
Happy to have
So welcome aboard to our friends from Sigma. Now, the last thing we're going to get to before we start doing the Angry Mustache Show is there was a big announcement this way, and this will be partially Angry Mustache Show. There was a big announcement this week that we saw some changes to mining here for the first time in a couple of months. What were the changes to mining? Well, they called this Resources Realigned. They are creating new ore types that will be put into asteroid belts that will be in close proximity to AO-type blue stars. There are a handful of these. I guess probably more than a handful. I'd say maybe 30 or so. How many do you think there are, Angry?
Well, I don't remember the list off the top of my head. I think there's numbers like 150 or so.
150, okay.
All of Eve.
150 across all of New Eden, and they are going to provide new deposits of megasite, zydrine, pyrite, and isogen. Isogen being one of the big bottleneck minerals right now in the market. But of course, what CCP gives with one hand, they take away with the other. And they are doing that in addition to providing a 25% nerf to moon goo output. That is, mining yield for moon mining is being cut by 25%. Now, keep in mind, if I recall correctly, and Angry can correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first cut that they've made after they doubled moon mining last year. And that was after they cut it before. So I'm trying to make sure we're not going to give them too much of a hard time about it.
They never cut it before. So what they did was the first change is they removed regular minerals from moons and then made all those R4s. So that's change one. Change two is they doubled the amount that came out of moons, and change three is they reduced that by 25%. So effectively now we have 50% more than we did before, but that's also with waste. So
and
that's in the same patch.
Yeah, exactly. And that's essentially what happened. And I appreciate that they ultimately didn't see a different solution than this, because it just is how it panned out with the numbers. But with them doubling it and then ultimately changing the waste implementation, which is something we really wanted, right? Their initial waste implementation, we didn't like at all. But as a sort of side effect of them improving that, the overall volume of moon minerals increased, and paired with a number of other things, right? That happened shortly after the end of the war. Overall demand in the game was down. We saw sort of this summer of malaise, right?
Yeah.
And so Tech 2 prices in general have been crashing.
Yeah, Brisc, you got the graph?
Yes, I do. So we were talking about this earlier. Here is the number. If you want to look at this, let me get rid of my lore lol joke there. We're doing okay. This is actually a good sign.
There's another graph.
Which graph is that?
The one about ship indexes.
All right, let me find that.
Yeah, he wants the inflation graph, the one that makes me sad.
Yeah.
Is that this one? Yes, there it is. There is the ship inflation graph. You don't want to see this.
Yeah, you want to zoom it up and zoom in a little. So this graph. So what this actually showing is why CCP did the Tech 2 nerf now, which is that so on this. So this is CCP data about the cost index of certain categories of goods in Eve. So so this is faction ships in light blue, Tech 1 in dark blue, Tech 2, the one that's trending downwards in orange, and Tech 3 in purple. So what you actually see here is that when the exact moment that the Tech 2 ship line starts decreasing, which means Tech 2 ships getting cheaper, is December of 2021, which shouldn't be a surprise because that is when they doubled the size of Moongu. And when you see that line going down, that roughly tracks with the fact that Tech 2s really depend on that Moongu bottleneck. And once that bottleneck is removed, Tech 2 ship prices collapse. And why this is relevant to CCP balancing is that ships in Eve are actually fairly fungible for their purposes, because players don't buy a ship just for that ship. They buy a ship for the capability. So what you see is, despite there being no change to faction ships and Tech 1 ships, there is a corresponding decline in their costs, because the much larger decrease of Tech 2 ships is causing what people might be familiar with econ might know that the phenomena is good substitution, is that people who would otherwise be buying faction and Tech 1 are switching to Tech 2 because Tech 2 is just that much cheaper. Right. So Brisc, you can see the downward trend in the light blue and the dark blue lines as well, with the with the orange line. And this is ultimately impacting balance in all of Eve, because
Because Tech 2 should not be there, right? Tech 2 is supposed to be at a much higher price point than some of those other power levels.
Yeah, it's
partially
pushing,
balanced by that, right?
This is pushing other ship classes out of their niche. Like the classic example is Cinnable versus Vagabond,
right.
Which basically do the same thing, but why would you use a why would you use a Cinnable when a Vagabond is half the price?
A Gila and an Ishtar, right?
Well, Gilas have unique capabilities. Like you can't run certain things with Ishtar that you can with a Gila. But I think this is one of those cases where, in order to preserve the balance of the game, that mining nerf is well justified.
Yeah,
now, I think one of the things that frustrates me is over the last year or so, and you can see this math here, and I hate to use the F word because Mrs. Brisc is going to yell at me. That was a really bad circle. Wow, it was almost as bad as my troll face. The price of T2 ships was going down, but these are the ships that most of us are using most of the time, right? So while folks were angry because faction ships and T3s and everything, and then obviously this is just subcaps, it does not include any capitals because capital prices were off the charts. Like, the price of getting into a good Tech 2 ship, going out and blowing something up and then dying was amazing. Like, if you look at the numbers, you go out and you see, I remember we were buying Kikimoras for the cost of a stabber. You know, it was nuts. You could get good, solid T2 ships and fly them and not have a huge amount of pain in the wallet. Yet everybody was still complaining that ships were too expensive because caps were too expensive. That was something that I never could get my brain wrapped around why people were complaining.
I mean, people hate me for saying this, right? But EVE is an MMO. And much as people like it or not, progression is part of MMOs. People want to feel like they're achieving something, right? And so I understand that people love having like cheap ships to smash into one another, and that makes a lot of sense. But I also am like, I can totally reconcile that with the fact that in that scenario for a year and change or whatever it was, that there was also this malaise and you ended up with a relatively small number of people playing the game because it seemed like there wasn't content, as it were. Now it feels like there's new content. A lot of people are playing it. So my big concern is that various parties are going to, look at that and say, things are healthy again. CCP did the right thing. We don't need to look anymore. And I'm not convinced that's entirely true, right? There's a sort of theme park.
I think nobody actually thinks that. I think nobody actually thinks that. You think? I think people recognize things are better than what they were, in the earlier parts of the year, but no one thinks that EVE is actually healthy compared to what it could or should be.
Well, and I think that's even define that.
Well, right? that's the question, right? I mean, it's hard to say. I don't think CCP has good metrics to define whether EVE is healthy. We talk about what they pay attention to, daily active users or Stargate jumps or whatever, compared to the numbers that we look at as players, which is mainly the PC, the peak concurrent user number, the PCU. That's what we're looking at because we want to see how many people are playing at the same time. Yeah. They're looking at how many people are logging into the game every day. And they have ways to juice those numbers. We don't have ways to juice the PCU. You just don't. People aren't logged in at the same time. They're not playing. And if you look at these numbers, I mean, look, right beginning of January, and I'm going to tell you what I think this is. This right here, you guys are going to laugh at me. I'm going to tell you, I think that's a Doctor Who event. Got people logging in and trying out stuff and seeing it. And a lot of people who were relatively new or who were Doctor Who fans and trying stuff out that got them in here. Then that's over. You get this malaise and the wait for FanFest effect. Everybody gets told, wait for FanFest effect, wait for FanFest, wait for FanFest. So here's FanFest right here. I put arrows in the wrong direction. There, it's a little guy. There you go. There's FanFest. And they have all of this stuff and everything is, you hear all of this great stuff. And then people start realizing, okay, it's going to be another couple months. 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 And then finally the expansion hits. All the people that had quit over the summer because there was nothing to do, there was no big war, the content wasn't there, nothing was changing, people were getting upset. You had big name players quitting the game. You had Matani retiring. You had Wally Martz like going crazy and blowing all of his stuff up. You had a bunch of people doing that. And the result was we lost a ton of folks, and we got down into what I think a lot of us consider the danger zone in the October timeframe, where we're getting, 11,000, 12,000, 13,000 people on in U.S. time zone, and it was scary.
Certainly
then the expansion comes out, and so far, combined with the Plex sales that they did, combined with the 7 days of free Omega that they gave out, as well as the fact that, I mean, generally speaking, this expansion has been well received. The numbers are going back up, which is good.
Yeah.
Whether they stay there is the next big question. I don't know. And yes, we did get this. The Spanish localization was also in there. But at the end of the day, I think the expansion was the biggest thing for a lot of folks. The Spanish players that I don't think many folks joined because of the localization, but I think it kept a lot of Spanish folks that were otherwise didn't want to deal with English. Now they can get the game in their local language and get it in Spanish. That's a good thing.
If there's any one,
but they were playing before.
If there's any one thing that's really going to move the needle on this game still in the world, Spanish is obviously it, right? That of the missing thing. So that is very exciting. I'm going to be interested to see not this year, but 3-4 years from now or 10 years from now, what that looks like, right? I was just talking to. Sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
So I was going to say that South America seems to have a very, very low EVE population compared to actually every other continent.
Sure.
Well, minus Africa.
Yeah. Is that more because they just don't like games like EVE, or is that an access to broadband issue, or what? I mean, I don't understand. That doesn't seem to be.
I assume it's a combination of that. Plus, honestly, I assume that RMT is not as big of an industry on that continent as it is in places like China and Russia that have had better broadband for a longer time, more consistently, and have one nation to administer it, right? That's an element of all of this. I was just chatting with a friend of mine about who was not aware of this, right? We've worked together for a long time, and he happens to be Serbian by birth, right? But we had never talked about like the real history. I was just telling him how big Russia was in EVE for all those years in the Dominion, right? But so that I don't think that has existed generally for gaming for Latin America. There's just no one unified place. I think the last time I saw a big unified group of gamers, all identifiably from one country, of course, was from Brazil, and they speak Portuguese, right? So of course, there's enough of them to hang together, right? So with that, there's not like a sort of shared Latin American identity where they would all work together, except now with localization, suddenly maybe there is. So we'll see. It'll be interesting.
TK in the chat is saying he lived in South America for about 10 years, and he says it's access to equipment and internet that's part of the issue. And then I want to point out, I agree with Noisy. Hooligan, that said the Brazilian, the sub price for EVE is 3 times more in Brazilian than it is anywhere else. And I agree with that, because I remember having a conversation with a couple players back when CCP was realigning the currency valuation for the sub price in Russia and changing, that this was at least more than 2 years ago, before the Ukraine war. So that was one of the things that they had asked for, and I had highlighted to, as a CSM member, saying, hey guys, keep this in mind. The sub price for certain countries, you're talking about multiple times the value of the minimum wage and stuff, and that's just crazy. That didn't help with the price increase.
And WoW can do that because WoW doesn't have a single shard where if they did implement preferential pricing for Brazilians, all the asshole Americans would make a VPN to Brazil and pay for their subs in reals instead of dollars, and CCP wouldn't want to do that.
And that's part of the issue, and I think that's one of the reasons why they don't. But I mean, it sucks. Like Gazad in the chat says right now, the sub price in South Africa is equal to a week's groceries. I can't imagine paying a couple $100 for subs, which is typically what you're going to spend for a family of 4 in the U.S. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, this is I don't want this to sound negative, because it's not, right? This stuff is fundamentally linked to the RMT trade in EVE and how easy it was, and linked to how important stuff like renting and botting was or is to the economy, right? In various ways. For many years, it was a lot more important than it is now. pre the farms and fields era for all of these alliances that held space to fill them out with renters, right? And so automatically EVE was just going to be filled with people who botting was effective, right? And it turns out that you could then turn around and sell a lot of money to people who wanted Titans, off under the table, and that paid for a fair number of apartments in a fair number of countries with different exchange rates. And at that time, exchange rates were better. This is real, right? I'm not saying I endorse it, right? But this exists in almost every MMO out there, and it played into EVE stuff in a big way because EVE's mechanics fundamentally supported it in a much bigger way than most MMOs do. Most MMOs, you farm your gold, and it's not honestly that important. But here it was layered directly into the strategy layer of EVE, and so you end up looking at the stuff like the 3-year-old chart about the Wheel of Shame with botting, right? And there are a ton of well-known alliance names on there that are rental alliances operated by people you might know from Cesspool or what have you, right? Mm-hmm. So it's all linked, but as that has changed, right, renting is no longer as big a part of the game compared to the overall farms and fields mechanic. And that's sort of a complicated question, but it's not the dominant thing it was, I guess, 10 years ago. They've done a lot to fight botting. Content looks different now. So there have been changes, and of course, exchange rates have changed, and the character of the economies in those other places has changed, and who's playing EVE has changed, and balance of power has changed. So it's, we'll see. But like with that stuff lacking, I can see how, like for the US and for Europe, EVE becomes more of a premium and expensive MMO that not as many people are playing, right?
100%. And just for the record, I think our goal is, what we'd like to see is EVE being played everywhere in the world.
Sure.
If this was not just a European / China, Australia, North American kind of game, that would create a whole bunch of new areas, a whole bunch of new content, and a whole bunch of new people playing. That would be great.
I would love to find ways. I would love for them to find ways to offer like better exchange rates, something that's appropriate for those countries. If they can make that work business-wise or financially, I think that they should figure out how to do that. Right. I appreciate, like I said, very intimately how that interlinks with the rest of the game. But I think the answer to that is to make EVE not as friendly to botting and to renting as a mechanic, right? And then you can offer the game subscription more cheaply to people in places where that's appropriate, right?
You think you could even say if you're paying EVE on a preferential rate, you don't get to extract your accounts and you don't get to buy Plex and things like that. So you can play, but you can't do the things that would distort the economy with your exchange rate.
Yeah, they've never done anything to explore what is between alpha and omega, for example. Not that you necessarily want to do that in all cases, but I don't know. So I think that they should.
Well, they are selling those mini omega packs now for 2 or 3 days, which is good. I mean, that's a new thing that I like.
It's a step in the right direction, at least that we're talking about it, right? But yeah, I think if they want to have an EVE that is 100,000 players, that doesn't happen without a lot more global involvement, and it doesn't happen without EVE going outside this model, right? The price hike has only heightened the model of this is a premium experience that pretty dedicated MMO players are playing for a really marquee, something you can't get anywhere else, right? To get much bigger, they have to expand the market they're targeting to, I think, and how people play it, right?
Now, there's a question in the chat from Noisy, and I want to talk to you guys, or actually from Tobiah Cowboy, because I want you guys to talk to you guys about it, because I hear this all the time. It's a very supply-side economics style argument, which is, the whole lower taxes and people will spend more, and that's good for the economy. The argument is CCP should cut the rate for the subscription in half, and that will increase the number of subscribers, and they will make more money. Do you guys subscribe to that? Sorry, Seema.
Is that you're asking?
I'm asking if you guys think is that likely to happen? Will that be the thing that happens?
It's not anything like that simple. No, I think they were probably right about the price hike, that they are going to make more money. As a matter of fact, it'll be close, right? But it wasn't like they were shooting themselves in the head or even the foot.
I think so. I think they should never have done the thing, because again, a subscription makes money by making the user not think that they pay for the subscription. Anytime where you make the user go into their bank account and look, oh, here, I'm running 4 accounts. CCP is dinging me for $80 every month. The moment you get the user to do that, you've already lost. So you should, one, never make any announcements about your subscription change unless absolutely necessary. And I don't think the price hike was absolutely necessary. And two, if you do it, don't then subsequently undercut the point of raising the price hike in the first place by making it cheaper, by releasing so many deals that it's occasionally cheaper to sub than before because you've already paid the cost for the bad publicity.
See, and
you haven't gained that much back because
I think that that's exactly their point. I think that what they are I think that it was very obvious that they were trying to both hike the base price, offer a bunch of discounts to keep people around and happy.
That doesn't work for subscription services, right? Like if Amazon Prime suddenly said, hey, we're going to raise our prices to $250 a year, but occasionally we'll give you a sale. Most people would give Amazon the finger, and
possibly.
But think about it this way. Think about it this way, and this is something that we touched on, I think, on Rampage a couple nights ago. But welcome to 2022. If you want to watch TV and you want to hit and watch all the TV shows that everybody is talking about,
oh boy,
you need a Netflix account, you need Amazon Prime, you probably need Apple TV, you may need Hulu or one of these other services. There's a dozen different services out there. Everybody's got subscription models. You got your Spotify account. You've got all kinds of stuff that are paid out monthly. To the point that nobody thinks about it.
The best
Disney Plus too. So
Pirate Bay, just pirate everything.
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, I think some people will do that. Other people, I don't think, are either they're scared to do that or they're not capable of doing that. So they just get a subscription or they try to borrow one of their friends or something. But somebody somewhere is paying a subscription for this. And you get so many of these subscriptions that unless you are like really paying attention and tracking this stuff very carefully, it's very easy to say, oh, well, I'm pretty sure I'm still paying for World of Warcraft for my son who hasn't played it in 5 years.
Yeah.
So I feel like sometimes when CCP put that change through, they were less concerned about active players who were going to pay regardless. They'll find a way to deal with it. They're basically trying to capture money from the brain dead people who forgot they had an account and have been paying $20 a month for the last 2 years.
But you don't do that because you've brought it to people's attention that the sub now costs $20.
I mean, it's a risk, right? But my impression is that this is really about raising the base price of Plex, right, of Omega and Plex, and then discounting it after, but banking on being able to bring people back to the game and continue to grow the game after that point and ultimately make more money. So in the situation they were in, would I have taken that risk? I think I would probably not have, but I also don't run companies. I have business partners for that, right? I work for a sales guy, as a matter of fact, in real life. So, I'm happy for someone else to take those decisions. And I should be paying with ISK, right? It's interesting to me.
Yeah. So to answer the question, I think it's hard for us, to say with any degree of certainty that reducing the price would have gotten more people to subscribe. If anything, I think it would have kept the people who were already subscribing to maintain their accounts. Many of the folks that left probably would have stayed, but who's to say whether or not that would have an impact? And look, we talked about on the show last week. I mean, CCP's third quarter numbers were not that bad. They were pretty much right in the median of raw dollar figure for revenue that the companies had since they were bought by Pearl Abyss. So it's not like it's not like the price increase hurt them, but it didn't help that much either.
No, it hasn't helped them yet, certainly, right? And I think that they probably expected that too, right? But I think they're probably not feeling that bad about their bet. Suddenly, twice as many people are playing EVE than during Q3 when they had a even on quarter, actually, in hard money terms. So, but I mean,
fourth quarter is almost invariably their best quarter. So I'm expecting that fourth quarter of 22 is going to be pretty good.
Look good.
But it will be as good as fourth quarter of 21 because people will look at year on year.
Yeah, that I don't think is possible.
So So here's my other comment on what the question was about, like, if you took the price down by half, would you get double the players? Well, I don't think it works that way. But I do think if you made options available to play EVE more cheaply that worked, right, that were not the very limited nature of an alpha clone, right? But they gave you the ability to log in, maybe just still one pilot, right? But actually play EVE Online and participate and feel like you're progressing your character, but without it being this premium experience where you need multiple accounts and they're each $20 a month. I think that could double EVE's player base if they figured out a way to implement that, but not as a matter of changing the current experience for the people who are paying for Omega and multiple accounts and all of this, but in terms of thinking about, like I said earlier in the show, expanding the amount of people that you're marketing to who can participate in EVE in a valid way, right?
Yep. So getting off of this, actually, I mean, I can show you guys. I'll pull it up here if you want to look at the Pearl Abyss by numbers. We did this last week, but I'll throw it back up on the screen so you guys can see it. Last year, let me make this a little bit bigger. You look at the raw numbers here. Fourth quarter 2018 wasn't great. Fourth quarter 2019, really, really bad. Fourth quarter 2020, pretty good. Fourth quarter 2021, probably. Fourth quarter 2020 and fourth quarter 2021 were probably two of the biggest of any of the quarters that they had. I mean, it was pretty solid. Third quarter 2020, you're never going to beat, because that was COVID and the launch of EVE Echoes at the same time. So that was, I mean, between those two and the Serenity relaunch. So you had all of that together. That was a huge deal. But the rest of these times, these other fourth quarters are usually pretty big. And I think, we can expect to see that again this time. Now, Angry, are you ready to talk about this thing right here? The MER.
Yes, I am.
For November.
We were supposed to talk about it last week, but didn't have time. But I'll keep it short because we only got 10 minutes left. But the TLDR of November MER said it's actually pretty good news, because all activity metrics in EVE are spiking, and you can see that through this MER through basically every single tab of it. So, yeah. So the big news here is, of course, they removed DBS, and what does that do? Well, it brought a lot of people. Oh, okay.
Bounty prizes. Look at that.
Yep. Went shot right back up to what it was before the DBS removal. And with that, you can see there's also a lot of other activity-related metrics that also spiked up, including a couple ones that are not as obvious but are good news. So, for example, Brisc, can you bring up the sinks and faucets graph?
Sure. Yes.
There are two of them.
Where is it? No.
Sinks and faucets. Sinks and faucets.
Sinks and faucets. Over time, this one? The one we were just on? Or
no, the other one. The one that looks like bar graphs.
Oh, all right. Let me find it. Dun, dun, dun,
you can find it down here.
I'm getting it.
Yeah.
There it is. No, that's exports by region.
Yeah. That's exports. The next one is
this one. There you go.
I should have numbered my slides again. Forgot to do that.
It's okay. You know me. That's how we do it on the show. Do it live.
So the very interesting thing about here is that besides bounty prices being high, there's also one specific category of sinks that is also very high. You scroll down a bit, it'll show you at the bottom. The thing we're looking for is, I don't think this is the full thing. Yeah. So at the bottom, go to sinks. Skill purchase. That number is 9 trillion this month versus about 2/3 of that, so 6 trillion in October. Now, why did that happen? That happened because the most reasonable explanation that people have been floating is that this is people who have been long unsubbed from EVE coming back and seeing and trying new things, which is why they need to buy a bunch of skills. Now, this is probably people using the free week of Omega and training up new Omega skills, and and that's a good thing. Is people coming back and they're trying things, which is why they would spend so much money on skill purchase. Now, if you go back to the slide about money supply, so the money supply looks like 3 lines trending. That's another way you can see this. So this one, yeah. So see that spike at the very end about character money supply. Now, the only explanation for this is that
people are logging in.
Just ratting is not doing that. This is people who've been who have not logged in for over 90 days suddenly logging in again, and that by any metric is good news for CCP because Eve is almost like a drug. If once you get hooked, you stay on it for a long time, and this is showing some people either probably restarted Eve because these people with money. New players don't have money in their pockets and they wouldn't show this money supply spike. But this is old players coming back, which is exactly what CCP needs the most. And this is a combination of releasing the expansion and giving that free week of Omega. And I think CCP probably sees this and are happy. And I think we can probably expect free Omega coming back during a big release because of this positive effect.
And that seems like a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you get a brand new expansion. You want people to try it. You've seen the numbers tanking for the rest of the year because folks are angry. Why would you not give them a chance to play for free for at least a little while to get a taste of the game again? I mean, that seems like a no-brainer. I'm surprised that that's not something they've done that often in the past.
Well, they didn't have a big expansion to do, right? Like,
that's true.
What you were going to do, maybe for the Trig Invasion they should have done it, but anything they released from then to here wasn't really big enough to wow people. It's like, oh, you get like a new ship or you get like a new thing. But this is a lot of new ships, a lot of new things, and the death of the hack meta, which people are very happy about.
Everybody's happy about that because fuck mutants forever.
Yeah.
All right, what else do we have here? So I was looking at the other...
Yeah, the MPI one we want to touch about. For
I do, because I know this is one of these things where, you know, I'm not an economist. Where is the damn thing at? No.
This one.
Damn it.
Yeah,
this one.
Go.
This one. Yeah.
That's
the trade.
MPI. It looks like 3. It's also 3 lines.
Okay. Yeah. Let me pull it back up here because there it is. No. Mining price index. Where the frick is it?
All the way down, all the way down, all the way down, all the way down.
This one, the full economic one? Yeah.
Economic in his full history, that one.
Yeah.
So this is the other one.
What the hell is happening with the MPI again? This is the second time it's done this.
If you're an industrialist, you sort of you definitely felt the price increase of Isogen specifically, and to a lesser extent, Noxium, Noxia, Zirgin, and Megasite, to a smaller extent. And this is this, I think we've warned CCP about this when they did the initial mineral redistribution, which is that Lowsec doesn't have the population to supply all of Eve with a resource, and that just is the truth. Lowsec is the least populated area of Eve, and there just isn't there's neither the population nor, and it's specifically the population of people who mine to supply Eve with Isogen and Noxium, which are the minerals that are supposed to be explicit to Lowsec. And I have a suspicion most of the Isogen coming into the system right now is from Parchment, because Parchment ores are, 1, really good, and 2, respawn really fast. So if you can get yourself a safe enough situation in Parchment, you can mine a lot, right? Like Locus has said, subpopulation Lowsec miners even lower. And I think this is, if you finally realize
to mine, because if they have more than 4 ships in one place anywhere snuffed out, will drop dreads on you. Just saying.
Right. The other thing is, if you could just bring up Celestes, do you know that website? Celestes.de.
Not off the top of my head, no.
I'll just put it in chat. That website. So that website shows the different ores in Eve, and it shows what it does is you have to you realize there's basically a floor to the value of doing an activity in Eve, and if the activity is beneath that, and that's depending on the sector of space. If the activity is below that labor price floor, basically nobody's going to do it. And here's where you run into the issue: is that if you want to go into Lowsec and do things and possibly die or be at risk, you can do it for better than 100 million ISK per hour. Like, there's tons of stuff to do in Lowsec that pay better than mining, that pays better than mining, Jaspet or whatever. So people aren't going to do it even if Lowsec exclusive minerals are expensive. So this is why they're putting some of them back in other areas of space through the new A0 sites, and I think eventually they'll have to do even more than that, because you can't really restrict T1 minerals like this. When you restrict T1 minerals like this, it's like the equivalent of the 73 oil embargo. It's something so fundamental to the EVE economy, and when that gets expensive, it has a lot of knock-on effects to everywhere else.
And that's one of the things that I think hopefully we can get CCP to pay attention to. And I think the whole concept, the whole idea of trying to force people to play the game the way that CCP wants them to play the game by screwing with mining is just so anathema to me that I really hope that they never do anything like this again, because it's the equivalent of, you know, juicing the tax code so that you can convince people to have more kids or buy houses or buy electric cars or something like that. Well, we'll give you a tax code. We'll give you a tax credit. We'll make it easier. And they do the same thing here, but it's not like that, because there are other outside issues with all of these different areas of space that make it impossible to be able to do it. They just assume that, all things being equal, if they put expensive stuff in low sec, people will move to low sec there and take advantage of that content. And that is not true. The one thing we have seen over and over again in this game is trying to force people to change the way that they play, to chase money or to chase wealth or chase, you know, space or whatever. It does not work. People will not do that. They will just accept making less, and they won't do the thing that you want them to do. And they've already seen that with wormhole gas. They're seeing it now with Isogen and Noxium. They're gonna have to fix that. We got to stop with this whole, all right, if we make it more lucrative, they're going to do it, because that's not true. It has to be something that the folks that live in that area already want to do, or else they're not going to do it. They're just not going to do it.
So the analogy is, no amount of tax subsidies is going to make Ferrari open a dealership in the bad part of Detroit, which is sort of like asking people to put their mining ships in low sec.
Right. It's like, why would you, you're not going to open up a Prada store, you know, in Beirut in the 1980s. Just don't do it. It'd be bad. So the whole thing here, I get frustrated with that, but that's the reality. And yes, political analogies from the libertarian view, all things from the libertarian view are wrong. And since this is my show, I can say that. All right, here we go. Is there anything else, gentlemen, that you want to talk about? Because there's one last thing I want to hit before the end of the show. We are a little over time. You guys are getting an extra little bit of meta show today out of us, but I do want to bring this up because it's important.
It's been choking out.
Poor Kaz has had internet trouble, so he's not been able to talk.
Heard it was great to see you this morning. Thanks for having us on the show.
Well, of course, you're always welcome.
I'd like to ask, is that the Iowa on top of your shelf in the back?
That is the USS New Jersey on my shelf. New Jersey.
Okay, well, so I can't tell from that range, but
well, they all look the same. I mean, they're the same class of ships, so it's an Iowa class battleship, yes, but it is the New Jersey, and it's resting on a plank of wood that came from the actual New Jersey. I bought it from the museum, so it's cool.
So they sold the decking on that.
They sell the decking because they replace the decking all the time, which is nice. So. There aren't any better cameras, Foxfire, nor are there better microphones, but I did fix the lighting, so you guys have one less thing to worry about. The sword is coming. The sword will take a year to get here. I bought a sword for Christmas. It's what the random things that I do. But speaking of ship models, this is the last thing that I wanted to bring up to you guys, and this is important because for the longest time, we have talked about EVE ship models, what we like about EVE ship models, what we don't like, why aren't there more of them, and those types of things. And they answered this a couple years ago by putting out a deal with a company that was putting out these EVE ship models. The bad news is they're not going to be doing it anymore. So if you had a mixed dimensions model, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, and I ordered 3 more, they're going away. So the last chance to order these is coming up in December. They're going to stop producing in December 31st. So I'm going to tell you guys right now, go over here. They are a little expensive. It's Integral Reality Labs, aka Mixed Dimension. They changed the name a couple times. They've got a number of very good looking 3D printed models of EVE ships. They are a little expensive. I mean, I can show you how they look. Here is the Macarial right here. My little Mac. I've got a Macarial. I've got the Talos. I've got an Oracle. I've got a Typhoon and a Scorpion that also looks like a rattlesnake. The Astero and some of the other ones here look really, really good on the model. I wish I had those. I don't have them, but I want to get those. These are great. Let me see if I can reach the Typhoon. Here is the Typhoon. The Typhoon is right here. I'll zoom in a little bit so you guys can see it. There it is. You can see that. Here, let me go to the main screen. You can see it a little bigger. Here is the Typhoon. Quality is pretty solid. It looks nice. There it is. There's the Typhoon. These are great models. And I say that as a connoisseur of models. You guys have seen my office. There are models everywhere in here. We're not going to have these guys around for much longer. So you've got basically 2 more weeks or so to order these things from Integral Reality Labs before they are no longer available. So get out there and buy them. This is how big they are. They're about 4 or 5 inches long, 6 inches long, depending on the size of the ship. This is the biggest ones. Now, some of them are bigger than others. The Oracle, I'll pull the Oracle up and show you that. The Oracle is pretty big. The Oracle is bigger. It looks much bigger. See, that's the Oracle one, and it looks pretty good. Now, they don't have guns or anything because obviously these are unfit, but they still look pretty good. I wish you could get custom skins. I wish you could get custom guns. But anyway, Mixed Dimensions is no longer going to be doing EVE models soon. So please, if you want to get your chance, I will link the... I'll link it in the chat here so you guys can see it. Here is the link to the website that is doing it. Get those before the 31st of December. Now, let me fix my camera here a little bit. Zoom out. You guys can see my chin hair. There you go. Now, programming notes for the Meta Show. Next Saturday, I am working on a end of the year in review wrap-up show.
Oh boy.
It's going to be a fireside edition, and it should be, barring anything unforeseen, a show starring our dear friends Merkelchen and Anominate, who have not been on the show in months. We're going to do a fireside wrap-up end of year, talk about all the stuff that's happened in EVE 2022, what hasn't happened, and then a little bit of what we expect may happen next year. And then next week's show will be the last Meta Show for 2022. Why? Because the next 2 weeks, Saturday is Christmas Eve. The next Saturday is New Year's Eve. This is one of the bad times when we get screwed because holidays. I mean, last year it was Christmas and New Year's on Meta Show, so we missed 2 weeks. This year it's Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, so we're going to miss it. So what I'd like to say is starting January 7th, we will be back live starting season 4 of the Meta Show. This will be the 4th year of me in the driver's seat, which is kind of scary. I can't believe we've been doing it this long. It's crazy. So I hope that you guys will all join us back for the next week's show with Merkelchen and Anominate. Fireside edition of the Meta Show, and then we will be back for season 4 on January 7th. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. This has been the Meta Show for December the 10th, 2022. I was joined by Casimir and Angry Mustache, my dear friends from CSM 17 and Goon Swarm. We talked about a lot of good stuff. I hope you all enjoyed it, and we will see you next week. You stay classy, New Eden.